Hi there, I'm Eitan, and welcome back to the Wix Wiz. Today I'm going to be sharing a sneak peek at a new feature that is under development by the Wix team and is currently in alpha testing. That means that there's a small set of users that are able to test the technology and give feedback. I wanted to share it with the community, even though the Wix team has asked me to say that this is not ready yet. Okay, so this is still in the oven. They're still making change to this. They're just really gathering feedback from users to improve and polish off this final product. But essentially what this will be when it's done is a custom widget builder for the Wix branded app. So the Wix branded app is an offering by Wix which allows you to create a branded mobile app version of your website. And one of the features that it's been lacking for a long time is the ability to add in custom code and connect to your data from your CMS collection and stuff like that. And what Wix is trying to do with this new addition is to essentially allow you to build the same custom interfaces in a way that's adapted to mobile as you would on inside of the Wix editor. So I'm going to be exploring this with you today and just giving my thoughts on what it's capable of at this point and what it still might be lacking before it comes out of the oven. So if you want to see all that and more, let's get started. Okay, so here I am in the dashboard of a new Wix Studio website. And I'm in specifically the site and mobile app section inside of mobile app. And this is, again, the dashboard of a completely regular Wix Studio website. If I hop over here, you can see this is the editor for this specific site that we're building. And today, as I said, we are going to be talking about the branded app and specifically the new Velo capabilities that are being developed for these branded apps. And as requested by the Wix team, I will reiterate that this is still something that's in alpha. So the branded app is something that's available generally, and I'll talk in a moment a bit about the difference between the branded app and the Spaces app. But within the branded app, you, until now, were somewhat limited in terms of customizing and fitting certain custom features that you may have developed with Velo on your Wix site. And now, essentially, what the Wix team is doing is developing the capabilities to use Velo within the branded app. And that's what we're going to be exploring today. But this is still in alpha. So for those of you who are not familiar with the terminology, alpha is a development stage where you're like exposing it to a very select few set of users to get feedback, as opposed to beta where you kind of release it to the general public for feedback, but it's not fully released yet. And as we know, Wix, nothing is ever fully released, and everything is somewhat always in beta because they just work at such a fast pace and they're always changing things. But this is really, really alpha, and the Wix team expressly wanted me to mention that this is not something that's fully baked yet, so it's completely okay and reasonable that we will encounter some bugs. And really, I'm just doing this to explore it and also to eventually provide this feedback back to the Wix team, but just give you this opportunity also to take a sneak peek. If you have any, feedback that you see, then you can kind of leave it in the comments below, and I can try and pass that on to the Wix team as well. So before we hop in again, just the differences between Branded App and the Spaces app, which you can see right over here. So the Spaces app is available also for any Wix website, and it is, if I'm not mistaken, it's free. And essentially, it's an app that you download from the app markets, the mobile app markets. It's called Spaces, and then users can use it to access your site using an app experience, but in this very specific app. Whereas the branded app, as in its name, is a branded app, which is an app that's specifically listed in the mobile app stores markets under your brand. There's no Wix branding around it, and you can really customize the experience a lot more than you can with Spaces. And it also costs money. So those are some of the differences between Spaces and branded app. So we're talking here about branded app. And Branded App is available for both editors, but the Velo customizations that we're going to be exploring today, at least currently, are only available inside of Wix Studio. Okay, so that's one thing to note if you're part of the alpha, or if you want to check if you're part of the alpha, or when it does come out eventually, I think it will only be, at least initially, for Wix Studio, so that's something important to note. So now that I've given that short intro, without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit this edit mobile app right over here. And let's see what happens. So I'm taken here into an editor for the app. And I see here that I have the ability to add in some elements. And these are all, again, these are all like pre-made elements that can link to various functionalities inside of your Wix website. So we have, let's say, the blog, groups, forum, etc. I'm sure we have here, yeah, store, bookings, pricing plan, all of that stuff. But what we are really taking a look at today is this custom widgets beta. So I'm just going to go ahead and click that custom widgets beta. And then I'm going to click right over here to go to the builder. And this is pretty exciting. So I'm not sure if there's actually any documentation for this yet. They might have sent me something about that in the email, which I probably should check. And it's loading up an editor. So first impressions, definitely getting, Wix Studio, Wix block vibes from this editor. More Wix blocks just because of the size of the canvas over here. Here on the side, we have kind of access to our different menus. So we have access to adding in different widgets. So this is something, if you're familiar with Wix blocks, you'll be very familiar with. Here we have a code panel, which is going to be very important. For some reason, these are grayed out at the moment. I'm going to try and figure out why that is in a second. And here we have data sets. Also creating collections here seems to be grayed out. Search code. Okay, so these are all stuff that we're familiar with if you've done any kind of development in Wix Studio or in blocks. Let's see over here, adding elements. Okay, so different kind of layouting elements, etc. So stuff that we're used to, text, buttons, etc. But I do see here on the side, when it comes to design, that there is a very different design approach within mobile. And this was true also for the branded app builder without the custom widgets. There's a very different approach to design on mobile, just because mobile, you've probably experienced this if you used any kind of standard mobile app. There are more rigid principles for how things are designed, and you have less flexibility just because of the size of the screen. So here you can see like there's all these different things about item direction and alignment and stuff like that, justification, and we're not getting a lot of the more complex layouter tools, at least from what I can see initially, that we would have inside of Blocks or Wix Studio. So let me first just hop in and start by adding in some elements and playing around with the design, and then we'll hop in and see, and I'll try and figure out why I didn't have access to the coding panel and why I couldn't add new files to write some code in. Okay, so as I said, first thing we're going to do is just try and put some elements here and see what the design experience like is in this custom widget builder. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in an element. So let's add in some text. And I'm going to add in an image, and I'm going to add in a button. Okay, and as you can see, like as soon as I add them, they are all like very opinionated about where they are. So it automatically goes to the upper left, and the next item automatically gets attached to the upper left, like right under that item. So very rigid. I mean, not rigid in a bad way, but just very well-defined placements of these items. They're not, I can't drag it around and just put it anywhere that I want, really. Let's see, I could try and add, let's see here, a margin left. Let's see what that would do. So I'm going to add, let's say, a 20 margin left. Okay, so that does allow me to move it and give it a bit of a margin, but I don't have that same, really like drag and drop experience that I would have inside of any of the other Wix editors. So that's one thing to note. Let me just get rid of this margin here. so we can explore some of the other design elements. So here I see, okay, so self-align override. Over here, this I'm guessing is an override of the principles that we define for like the parent, this widget. So for example here, if I change the item direction, so let's say I do left to right, so you can see how everything gets rearranged from left to right. I'm going to just return it to the way it was because it's a lot more logical. And then here we have, so horizontal alignment, so I can center everything like that. And then, for example, if I go into the button, then I can override it over here. So I can say, okay, even though my principle for the parent, for the widget, was to align everything to the center, here I'm going to align to the left. And I'm guessing I also have some options to do some kind of spacing. Let's see what we have over here. So align to center. That's one kind of spacing. Let's see, space between. So that stretches out everything. That's what I did over here, space between. I don't see some kind of like gap though between the different items like we had in a like a typical layouter tool inside of Wix Studio. Let me see if there is something like that. Okay, so we have here layouts. Inside of layouts, I just have here repeaters, which we're going to be playing around with soon. Yeah, so just some different layouts here that are pretty like standard Wixy looking and mobile looking. So it's pretty helpful if you just want something to get started. We have buttons, which is cool. We have inputs. So this is important for us because a lot of customization has to do with, creating different kinds of forms and stuff like that. So here we have, it seems like a text input of some kind, numeric, price, weight. So yeah, so initial impression here is that we're somewhat limited in terms of inputs. So these all seem to be different variations on a standard text input. So settings, yeah, so we'd have different kinds of inputs over here technically, but it's all really just variations of what we'd call a text input in like standard, I mean also web dev, but also the Wix editors that we're used to. So that is an initial thought here in terms of limitation. So you wouldn't be able to create a form with, a drop down or like some kind of radio buttons or checkboxes. That's super important. So those are some things that initially I would say are kind of missing. Again, I'll do the Wix team justice. This is an alpha, so it could be that it's somewhere down the pipeline. It just hasn't come in yet. But I would say that those would be pretty critical for building customizations within any within anything, pretty much within an app. So okay, so that's some initial thoughts on adding in design, etc. And now what we'll do is we'll try and experiment a little bit with writing code, which is what this is all about, and connecting to data and collections and stuff like that. So let me try and hop in and figure out why that wasn't working for me initially and how we can get that started. Okay, so back to talking a little bit about coding. Again, going into this blind, I'm not looking at any kind of instructions or documentation. I'm just going to try and use my intuition. So one thought that I have is that I may need to add files inside of my Wix website before I can add files here in the public and backend. Here for the widget itself, so we have the IDE here, and we have this area where we can write code. Also, just initial thoughts on this. So very similar to a widget inside of blocks. So we have an onReady function. We have a $ widget. We have an onProps changed, but I don't, oh here, properties and events. Interesting. Interesting. So I see here, let me see if I can see here in the layers. Okay, that's the top layer over there. Yeah, so let me just share a little bit about what's going through my head at the moment. So initially this IDE reminds me of Wix blocks because this is exactly what the IDE would look like inside of Wix blocks. But I don't actually see props here inside of the builder. I don't, so typically within Wix blocks, you'd have like a button here that would say like API or something like that, like kind of here inside of the panel. And it would allow you to set properties and events or functions, I forget what it's called exactly, but or maybe both, for the block. Here I don't see that, but we still have this onProps change function. So I'm wondering if there are really properties here. If so, how would they be changed? Yeah. So I'm just kind of, I'm a little confused about that, to be honest. Yeah, that's just some initial thoughts here about coding here in the widget. Yeah, so let me just backtrack to trying to access these files here. I see also I can't create a collection here. So my guess, again, is just that I need to do those things inside of the editor of my actual Wix website. So I'm going to go here back into the editor. And the first thing I'll do is I'll create a collection. So I'm going to create a collection. And let's just create a collection with like some mock data that we can use inside of our app. So let's say I'm going to create like a student listing. Okay, it's a pretty standard thing. A listing of any kind or a directory, that's something pretty standard that we might want in our app. So let me create something with AI just because I'm lazy. So let's say here students, and I'll just say here like grades, scores, names, ages. That sounds like enough to me. So let me just go ahead and generate that collection. Awesome. Student photos, sure. Create the collection. And then once I have this collection created, here inside the editor, let me pop back into our widget editor and see if I have any databases here, and I see that I do. Okay, so this indicates to me that within the builder itself, you can't really add any new collections or add any new code files to the backend. So let me just try and do that here again from my editor. So I'm going to go here to code. I'm going to go to public and backend, and I'm going to try and add in a web module. So let me just call this, let's say, students. Okay, right over here. And I'm going to create that backend file. And then if I go over here back to the widget and I go back to public and backend, I don't see the web module yet. It could be it's taking some time to kind of just load in. Let me try refreshing. Let me try refreshing the widget. Um, I just remembered that while I was playing around, I did notice this button up top that could be used to sync the backend. So let me just point that out right over here, just to do them justice. So here, you can see here sync backend, and then there's this sync button. So it could be that if I would have pressed that and not refreshed, that would have given me access to the backend file. So since I don't see the backend file here, let me actually try clicking that. No. So, hmm. That's something that doesn't seem to be working. Um, Dev mode is turned on as read only. Hmm. Let me try making some changes to this file. So let me get rid of this. And let me build like a very simple query here inside of the backend. Okay, so what I'll do here is I'll say get students, and I'll import Wix data. And then what we'll do over here is I'll just run a very simple query. So return, let's say const students query result equals to await Wix data dot query students dot find, and I'll just suppress auth just because I'm not sure what permissions I put there on the collections. And I'll turn this into an asynchronous function. And I'm sorry if this is a bit fast or unclear. I mean, if you're really new to developing and writing code and stuff within Wix, then I have quite a lot of tutorials explaining various aspects of this process. So please do check them out if you want to learn more about, querying in Wix and how to use the backend and stuff like that. So here, I'm just going to return the student's query result.items. So pretty simple. I'm not doing any error handling or anything here. I just want to see if like making changes here to the file warrants some kind of change here um, inside of my widget. So I'm going to try sync the backend again. And I'm still not seeing anything over here. So I'm going to take a slightly extreme measure and I'm going to try to actually publish my Wix website. So this is a slightly problematic notion because I hope that I wouldn't have to publish the site in order to access the backend files inside of the app builder. But I can see why, if everything is not working 100%, that may be something that will actually help us get through this initial blocker, which is the fact that I can't see that backend file inside of the widget. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to publish that. And I'm going to try again to sync the backend. And now I do see the students.web.js. Okay, so it does seem like I needed to publish the site with that new file in order to see it here inside of the widget. But now that I do see it, interesting. Okay, so first of all, let's read this warning that we have here. So it's auto-generated code, do not modify. This file contains automatically generated code which matches your site backend. Awesome. This doesn't match my site backend because it's not updated. Let me try and sync it one more time. No. Okay. The thing is, though, that considering this warning, the fact that this is a read-only file, essentially, like I'm not meant to make any changes here, might mean that it actually doesn't really matter so much what access I have to this file. Like it would be easier if I could see the files here inside the widget instead of having to go back to my Wix editor to understand which files I have. But considering that it's a read-only file, technically as long as I know, what methods I have inside of the file here inside of the editor and what I need to import, I'm not too worried at the moment. Okay, like obviously this is something that's a bit of a bug and should be fixed, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's like super critical, like, you know, CrowdStrike level bug. Um, yeah, just to tie us into some recent news. Okay, so let me see here now. Let's say we want to actually import this getStudents method and get those students inside of our widget. Okay, so let me try to implement that. I'm going to go here to the widget, and I'm going to go back to the front end code essentially of the widget, which is what we can see over here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to import the method over here. Let me just zoom right in so you can see from backend slash, and we called it students.web. Okay, so it's recognizing this file, so that's already a good sign. And then what I'll do over here, let me just get rid of all this boilerplate code. And let me just create a new function, let's say. So an async function. Let's call it load students, just that it's different between get students and load students. And what I'll do here is I will say const students equals to await get students. And then I will log the students. So console.log students. And let me call load students over here. And now essentially we can try out this preview mode that we have here. So let me go into preview mode. And there we go. Okay, so right over here, we have our students. Okay, so we successfully managed to access data from the backend of our site and use it momentarily here within this widget. Okay, so let me just give you a few thoughts that are going through my head as I'm doing this. So first of all, super cool and super powerful. Okay, we have a single backend, a single server, which we can use for both our website and our app. So we can build business logic in one place and access it from two different front ends, okay, which is super cool. It's a direction Wix has been going in general with headless and stuff like that. So super powerful concept. Something that I am a bit worried about, not having to do with that specifically, but having to do with preview. Okay, because as we know, and if you've been watching the channel for a while, then you know this about me for sure, I'm not a huge fan of preview modes in the Wix editors, in the blocks editor, just because preview does not manage to give you the full experience and check everything that you would need to check as an actual user of the site. For example, if special user permissions were needed to access this data, and I wanted to check out the difference between a logged in user and a plain site visitor, I wouldn't really be able to do that here within the preview mode of this widget. So it's really very surface level preview. And the question that arises now is, what is the process for testing this widget within the app? Like, how far do I have to go in order to install the widget, build the widget, install it in an app, maybe view it on my phone, in order to really get the full experience and do the testing that's needed for a real production application? So that's a question that's lingering in my head, especially after my experience with blocks and the slight hassle that's involved in actually effectively testing blocks. So that's something that I'm definitely going to want to explore a little later on in this demonstration slash walkthrough. So I'm just putting it out there as a question because it just came up as I was pressing that preview button. I'm like, wait a second, how am I actually going to test this app? But we can leave that for a little later on, possibly when we actually hit some kind of hump in testing and stuff like that. So now that I've managed to get some data inside of the application, inside of the widget, I'm going to work on how are we going to display that data inside of a UI that we're building for the app. So in order to effectively display a list of students for a directory, we're going to need to use a repeater. So let me go ahead and see. We definitely saw before that we have a repeater element. So let me just go over here and I'm going to look here for layouts. And let's take one of these repeater presets. So I'm just going to grab this one over here, let's say. Just because I don't want to spend a lot of time on designing and I just want to get things done. So here we have a repeater, and I'm pretty sure that from this point on, the experience will be very similar to our standard Wix editor experience. So I'll just grab this repeater, let's say, and I'm going to head down here into the IDE, and we'll start naming things. So this will be our students repeater. And then I'll grab here, let's say one of the items, and I'll grab this thing that says title, and I'll just change this to say, let's say student name. And then I'll grab here this subtitle, and I don't even remember what data we actually have to display here, so let me just double check. Students, so let's get the age of the student. So I'll change this to say student age. And then what I'll want to do is just grab, let's say, this image, and that's a container. Grab the image in the container, and I'll just call this student image, if I could spell. Great, so we have that set up, and now it's just really a matter of setting up the repeater. So I'm going to say here, function, let's say setup repeater. And what I'll do here is I'll just set up the repeater on ready. So I'm going to grab that repeater, students repeater dot on item ready. And here we're going to have item and item data. So this is, if you've seen some of my other repeater tutorials, this should be super familiar stuff. This is exactly the same as I would do it inside of the Wix editor or the Wix Studio editor. And then just select the different items. So let's say item student name dot text equals to item data dot, I think we called it name. Let's see. The AI did the naming, so I'm a little, yeah, we have name, age, and image. So pretty simple there. A little bugginess there, but nothing too big of an issue. Item, student age dot text equals to item data dot age. And then we'll just do the photo as well. So student image dot, here it's going to be dot source equals to item data dot image. Okay, and then here when we actually load the students, we're just going to make sure to assign that data to the repeater. So student students repeater dot data equals to students. And then we'll set up the repeater before we actually load the students. And that should be enough to give us kind of like a directory of all the students. So let's go ahead and check that out in preview. And let's see. Boom. Okay, so here we go. We have Alice. This for some reason says subtitle and not the actual age. It might be because age is a number. It might be because age is a number, so I need to convert that to a string before I assign it to the repeater. So that would be, let's say, this age.toString. And then just go back into preview. But you saw that, it gave me a directory of all the students. There we go. We have the ages there now. So pretty cool. Okay, this is a classic thing that you might want to customize on your Wix website. And it would be pretty challenging to do it would be impossible to do without this custom widget builder. Okay, I do want to highlight here that although I decided to do this with code utilizing the backend and whatnot, from what I see, you also have the option to connect this to data using a data set. So I could just go over here where it says CMS connections, or from here, connect to CMS. And then I can add in a data set and essentially connect to the data also with no code. Okay, so this is something for those of you who are looking for no code customizations. It's also a possibility. Obviously, just like with the Wix editor, eventually you sometimes do hit some limitations with the no code solutions, and that's where code comes in handy. But you should know that you do have the option here to do things with data sets. Now what I'll do is I'll just add one more level of functionality just to have like a little more fun here. So let's add an input on top that will allow us to filter these students, let's say by name. So in order to implement our filter or our search bar, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add in an input element. And here, so this is just an example of what's good, but where we are going to encounter limitations with limited inputs. So with these, I can utilize and create some kind of search bar, let's say, but I won't be able to have a drop down with several options for them to choose and filter based on, or to do like a sort or something like that. So we really are quite limited without the option to have a drop down. I mean, it's pretty critical when it comes to customizing things. But let me work with what we have at the moment. So I'm going to go and I'm going to add this one line input. I'm going to drag it here so it is, I want to drag it so it's on top. Let me see if I have some kind of easy way to change, probably here through the layers. Yeah, I feel like the drag and drop is a little harder when it's like in this very rigid structure. So here we have the input. The design looks a little weird. It's not the standard like design that I would expect for an input. Let me see what I can change here. The preset already comes with its own design. That seems a little limited. um, yeah, so I can't really change the design here. It doesn't look like an input field. Am I missing something? Um, I see here some interesting stuff. So autocorrect, autocomplete. I'm wondering how autocomplete would work. There are a lot of things, there are a lot of interesting things here to explore that I'm seeing here in the settings. Um, some stuff that might be specific to mobile, but definitely what to explore here within the input. It might be more versatile than I assumed just going in, but that's definitely worth a little more exploration. But let's deal with what we have at the moment. So here, I'll change this to say, let's say search and start typing. Okay. So what we'll do here is when somebody inputs something to our search input, what we'll do is we will automatically run a filter on this and essentially just get the items that match that search. So let's say for now, just by name. So what I'll do here, let's start to build that out. So I'm going to change this over here to be search input. And I will build another function here, let's say under load students, that will be for actually running the search. So I'll say async function search students. And what we'll do here is I'll say const query equals to the value of the search input, so dot value. And then what I'll do here is I will essentially, let's say, load students, but I'll pass in the query over here like this. And now we're going to make some alterations to our front-end functions and back-end functions to support this kind of search. So first of all, for load students over here, we're going to want to take a query parameter, and we'll want to pass it into the get students function in the backend. Okay, so here we have our query, but at the moment, our backend doesn't support this query yet. So let's hop back into our backend here inside of the Wix editor. And what we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to take a query parameter right over here. And we're going to want to alter this query if we have the query parameter. So what we'll do here is we'll build this query a little differently. And I'm kind of doing this on the fly, so it's not too well thought out. But let's say const students query equals to, and here we're going to start building the query. And then we will conditionally add something to the query if there's this query parameter. So I'll go over here and I'll say if query. Then what we'll do here is we'll say students query dot contains, and then here we'll have, let's say, name, and here we'll have the query. Okay, so what this will do essentially is add on an additional filter to our query if there is actually a query parameter. So when it initially loads, there's no query, so it'll just load everything. And when there is a query parameter, it will just load the students that match that. So the name contains whatever I put into that search bar. And then here for the students query result, I'm just going to use the students query here. Okay, so no need to rebuild the whole query from scratch. So made the changes to the back end. Let's do a little experiment. So what I'll do, last thing before we experiment is I'm going to need to actually call this search students whenever we start typing inside of the search bar, right? So I'm going to do that right over here. So let's do search input dot on change. Ooh, let's see, not on change, but on. I'm so happy that I'm actually like getting really hands-on here with this investigation, with this walkthrough. Because here I'm noticing that the search input, it only has an on-change event. It doesn't have an input event like a standard input does inside of the Wix editor. Let me just double check that. Yeah, ooh. So that actually slightly changes how I'm going to want to build out my application, because that's not such a good user experience, but I will add in a button. So let me go ahead. I'm going to add in a button. I'll make it here. This is a nice button. And let's say I want, okay, so this is really opening like new avenues of things to explore. Because let's say I want this and this. Okay, so let's say group. No. Like I want to get this button to be like over here on the side. But it doesn't really seem like that is an option for me. I'm sad. um, like I get why they might not want to let you do that because you do have limited space on mobile, so technically it might be better for the button to be here. Let's change the, I guess, width to fill. Maybe that looks a little better. But also the spacing, like, I feel like I'm not so in control of the spacing. I guess I can add, let's say, a margin here. Like I'm adding a margin here on the bottom for this. And then the spacing I can do to the top. Okay, fine. I can add margins to the stuff on the bottom here, let's say. Okay. Um, am I very happy with this? No, but it's not so bad. Okay, so let me change this to search. And I'm also going to rename this button to be the search button. And I'm going to incorporate that here in our code. Search button dot on press. So that's interesting. So there's no click. That makes sense because it's not really a click. It's a press that you do with your finger. And I do see that there are some cool like event listeners that are specifically for mobile, so like long press, press in, press out. So that is cool that they do have these event listeners, but I'm not sure why they would have to take out like an event listener like on input. I don't see why mobile phones can't do that. I don't know. Okay, but cool. So let's say on press, and then here I'm going to run our function search students. Awesome. Let's go ahead into preview mode, and I'll remind you that I haven't published my site, and I haven't synced the backend in 21 minutes. So I'm curious to see if like I go into preview mode, if the backend will still work like before, or it'll work based on the updated backend that I just added in. So I'm going to go here into preview mode. And we got our initial list of students. And let me start typing. So let's say Bob. Let's search for Bob. Doesn't look like much happened. um, doesn't look like much happened. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go edit widget. I'm going to try and sync the backend again. So I'm going to go here, backend sync. And now let's try preview mode again. So let's see if that helped. So I'm going to search here for Bob, and I'm going to click search. And that still came back with the full array here. So what I want to do is I'm going to publish this now. I'm going to publish my site. And then I'm going to head to the branded app. And I'll sync. And I'll preview. And I'll type Bob, search. Okay, so that seems to still not be working. Um, so maybe I have a bug in my backend. So what I'm going to do is let me run this backend function over here. So let's say I'll run for a query of Bob, and I'm going to go ahead and hit run. And oh, okay, so it seems like I have something wrong here. And I think I know what it is. I think I know what it is. So here, what I did is I appended the additional, this is what happens when you do things on the fly. So I added the students query dot contains here, but I didn't reassign it to the value of students query. So this is going to need to be a let, and then students query is going to need to be reassigned this value. So we learned a lot of important things here. Also why it's good to check your backend before testing on the front end. Awesome, lots of lessons here. Let's try that again. So I'm going to go ahead, get rid of this, run that, returned with just Bob. Awesome. So now that we know that our backend is definitely working, let me just go ahead here to the branded app, and let's try that round of tests again. So I'm going to go into preview mode. Again, I didn't sync the backend and I didn't publish since I made those changes. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit search, and that does not seem to be working still. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to sync the backend, try preview, and I'm going to hit Bob like that. Still no joy. Okay, I'm going to try publishing, and I'm going to head back into preview, and let's wait for everything to load, and Bob, search, just Bob. Okay, so still we see that we need to publish our Wix site in order for the backend updates to be exposed to the application. Okay, which I guess it kind of makes sense because like the app is disconnected from your website and it's calling those APIs. But since this is a preview mode, like your Wix website would have worked in that case. Like if you were in the Wix editor and you were trying out preview mode inside of the Wix editor with a change to your backend, it would use the most updated backend and you wouldn't have to publish your site for that. So that's just like a nuance of what the implications of preview mode are and how they differ here in these custom widgets than in your backend. But yeah, so this is like a very basic search experience. It's not designed particularly lovely, but it does work, and it's a lot more than you could do until now with the branded app. So the last thing I'll do here before making any final comments and conclusions is I will try to publish this and see what it actually looks like in more advanced kind of testing environments. Like, can I see this, how it looks within the app itself in the app editor? Can I see it on my phone, etc.? So let's hop in and try and explore with that a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to publish. Your widgets are published. To add custom widgets to your branded app, go to the mobile app editor. Existing widgets have been updated and any changes are now live for app users. Okay. So that's interesting. So if this widget was already in my application, then it would have just gone live basically when I hit publish, which I don't know how intuitive that is because I'm not like seeing it in the application now. But let me go here back to the mobile app editor over here. And let me try and see how I can find how can I find my custom widget? Like I didn't, oh, I guess the name is just widget one. So I guess it would be called widget one somewhere over here. Let me try like opening this again. Custom widgets. I don't see it listed here. Hmm. Hmm. Let me try refreshing. I'm curious how I'm supposed to find the widget now. Yeah, I mean, again, some of these things might be things that have instructions and I'm just not reading them. So I don't like to point fingers without having read the instructions. But this does seem... Oh, wait. Oh, there it is. Wait. Oh, it appeared now. Okay. So you have to refresh after publishing to see the custom widget here. But there it is. That's my widget that I just built. Okay. And let me just try adding it here to the home screen of my app. It seems to be taking a second to load. Hmm. Okay, so let me go ahead and just assume that it's working. Benefit of the doubt. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Save. Finish setting up your branded app to go live. Maybe later. So how can I now test this application? So here I see a button Preview on Mobile. So I'm going to go ahead to that. And I'm going to grab my mobile phone. And I'm going to scan the QR code. And this opens up the Wix. You can see actually here it says in the instructions, it opens up the Wix Owner app. And then tap the Manage tab. Whoa. Okay, like this is what's happening now. So like it automatically opened up, just so you can kind of, let me lower my brightness a bit, maybe that will help. So, yeah, so when I scanned the QR code, it automatically went to like the Wix Owners app and then automatically went into this. So I haven't done anything since I scanned the QR code that you see on the screen. And it went into my branded app preview. It took a few like jumps through like applications, but it all happened automatically, and I'm here now inside of my branded app alpha. And if I scroll down a little bit, then you can see here the custom widget that I just built, okay, with Alice and Bob and everyone. And if I go ahead and I try to, let's say, search for Bob, okay, then you can see there just Bob is coming up, okay? So that works. It's pretty cool. And now let's hop in and talk about some concluding thoughts and remarks regarding this custom widget builder. Okay, so we've played around with the custom widget builder for the branded app. We experienced the design, we experienced how it integrates with your data and your backend, and how the whole publish and preview process works. So I just want to give some final thoughts based on this experience. Obviously, I haven't tested out every single feature here, and again, I want to provide the disclaimer that this is something that's an alpha, so it's a pretty early stage of exposed development, let's call it. So there could be significant changes before this actually reaches the hands of most of the people who are watching this video. But I just do want to give some initial thoughts based on what we do have, because that is what there is, so that is what I can critique and share my experience about. So first of all, huge leap forward. Okay, so from a branded app which could do nothing custom, we now have significant abilities to connect to a shared backend and database with your Wix website. Okay, so you can really, it's really like a whole different approach than just having a website. It's really about having an application and having something which has a backend and business logic and data, and it's shared among multiple different front ends and things that are accessing it via API. So it not only changes what you can do, but also how you have to think about how you're building your website and your platform and your application. So that's one initial thing, huge leap forward. Some things that I really felt were missing here and I think might be a little more challenging. So first of all, the lack of inputs is quite problematic and it's quite limiting. And it really, that along with kind of the more rigid design structure really makes me think about how well it would be able to handle like more advanced use cases. Let's say customization of Wix business solutions, like what would building a custom product page in this look like? Is that even possible? Because we don't have drop downs. So how would people pick product options, let's say? So you're stuck. So while I think that this is a really cool direction, and it does open up avenues for certain customizations, I think that the example that I provided here actually might be a little close to the edge of the capabilities of what it currently provides. Okay, so you could create a basic directory and have some kind of search functionality. Another use case that I can envision based on what I've seen here is some kind of custom form that can collect information but only using text inputs. Um, I'm really having trouble envisioning something much more advanced than that at this point. Do let me know in the comments if you disagree, if you're also somebody who's trying out the alpha. And definitely like comment with stuff that you also noticed might be missing or not working so well, because I'm sure the Wix team will find it valuable and hopefully that will improve the final version of this product when it actually is released. But overall, I enjoyed trying this out, and if you're still watching at this point, thank you. If you found this interesting, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment just so I know if this is the kind of video you want to see, or you want to stick to like just stuff that exists and will help you solve immediate problems that you have on your website, which is also totally fine. And if you want to see more videos about the Wix ecosystem and coding on Wix and customizing your Wix website, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on our weekly videos. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.